Welcome to another episode of the Candlestick Point Report. I am John Jay, and this is my boy Shifty 49ers Talk. And we're going to talk about 49ers news and topics today. I hope you enjoy the show, and we're going to just jump right into the show. I want to start off with this topic that I talked about on my channel, but I wanted to talk about it with Shifty because I wanted to get his thoughts about this. Elijah Mitchell, the possibility he could be a 1,000-yard rusher, probably the first time since Frank Gore, I think. It's been a long time we had a 1,000-yard rusher. And and the reason why I feel he can be a 1,000-yard rusher last year, he could have been a 1,000-yard rusher last year. He only played 11 games, missed 6 games due to injury. But let's hypothetically, he's able to play more than 11 games, more than 12 games. Let's say a minimum of 13 games, maybe 14 games or the entire year. What are your thoughts about Elijah Mitchell being a 1,000-yard rusher for the 2022 season?
I kind of go back and forth on this one. So I guess the way that I'll put it is he good enough to have 1,000-yard season if he plays 13 games? Absolutely. I mean, we saw a lot of what he did last year. Trent Williams spoke incredibly highly of Elijah Mitchell, said he hits incredibly hard. He's pretty fast. He's athletic. He, runs, how Kyle Shanahan likes. He just, hits the gap and goes for it. So I think he's good enough to be 1,000-yard rusher. Now, the thing is, will he be? So I don't know, because if you think about it, we drafted a running back in the third round. We have Trey Sermon. Maybe he starts showing something why he was a third-round pick in 2021. And then Jeff Wilson, JaMychal Hasty. And I think maybe what Shanahan wants to do is to kind of spread it out a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to say that there will be games if Mitchell's running really well, maybe he will get 20 to 25 carries. But I think my guess is that, I just don't know if we'll see Mitchell get enough carries to get to 1,000 yards. He's absolutely good enough, but I don't know if he'll get there.
The thing that happened last year, and the reason why I think, and I'm going to disagree with you very respectfully, but Elijah Mitchell was a rookie, 11 games. And let's look at it. Let's look at his numbers. Let's look at his numbers. Okay. All right. 11 games, 997 yards in 2022. Okay. Deebo Samuel became more of that wide back, taking carries away from him. And of course, he was injured in and out of the lineup. And of course, we have to understand how Kyle runs the offense, is that if we have, say, a healthy Jeff Wilson Jr., hopefully Trey Sermon steps up. We still have JaMychal Hasty. We drafted the running back from LSU's Davis Price. So there's a lot of running backs, and we know that our running backs, for whatever the reason, get hurt. But let's say if Kyle is more smarter, and we got a good run game coordinator, and also the assistant head coach in Anthony Lynn. So when I look at all these factors, there's a possibility that Elijah Mitchell could get 1,000 yards. Now, if Elijah Mitchell, again, I don't want him to be the bell count. There were games where he had 30 carries, 27 carries, 25 carries, a little bit way too much, which is one of the reasons why, he was in and out of the lineup. So when I look at, if Deebo's back to that wide receiver, pure wide receiver, and Elijah Mitchell is the guy, you even give him just 20 carries at the most, and then you divide the other 10 to 15 carries with 2 other running backs, you can still have Elijah Mitchell. And again, it's 17 games. 17 games. It used to be 63 yards. Now it's 57 yards, 58 yards for 1,000 yards. And I think if he gets 58 yards per game, and he plays every game, but he's going to have some games where he's have 100 yards, and some games where he's going to be sharing the carries. So I think there's a possibility that he will hit the 1,000-yard mark. Again, we don't know how many games he's going to play. That's just my thoughts about the running back. And again, we also have to account during the Super Bowl run, Raheem Mostert had under 800 yards. Coleman had over 600 yards. Matt Breida had over 550 yards. So if our running backs are like that, if we get 3 running backs and they do that, we won't get a 1,000-yard rusher. So that's another possibility. So if I had to make a guess and a and again, I don't do predictions. I would probably say Elijah Mitchell will have probably 900 yards. Probably will play like 12, 13 games because I'm worried about how many games he's going to miss this year. So if he's able to play every game healthy, yes, he's a 1,000-yard rusher. That's my thoughts about that. Any final thoughts, Elijah Mitchell, possible 1,000-yard running back?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really curious, and like, I guess what looking at the depth of the running back, it's all of us are just guessing, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, if you asked us a year ago, hey, would Debo Samuel be a great running back and do all this crazy stuff? I mean, people would have thought he can do it, but is Shanahan going to put Debo Samuel as a running back? That's crazy. So
Mhm.
you never know what Shanahan's going to throw in there, or really what Shanahan's going to do. Now, we do know he loves to run the ball. That's the starting point for any Shanahan offense. But I do think, if I had to guess, judging by the draft, that like we're going to see a lot more of a rotation. So similar to what you mentioned, 2019, we had guys who had 800 yards, 600 yards, 550. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something similar to that again. Now, no discredit to Elijah Mitchell. He's a very good player, and I think he could get to 1,000 yards, but my guess is that they just split the carries up too much. And ultimately, I think we want to keep him healthy, limit his carries in the regular season. And that way in the playoffs, you play your best players, and then we start seeing him run the ball a lot more.
Yeah. So now let's move on to this topic as we're continue talking about position players. We're talking about the possibility of Elijah Mitchell. But now let's talk about this. This past weekend, I talked on my channel that last year the 49ers had a 14,000-yard receiver in Debo Samuel, but he took some time away from his production as a running back. And George Kittle, in only 14 starts, missed 3 games with injury, 910 yards, 90 yards shy of. We could have had 2 receivers in the 1,000-yard category, and even with the doghouse that Brandon Ayuk was put in by our head coach, he had 826 receiving yards. So I want to ask you the question: with this information, with these numbers, and again, we did this with Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback. I want to get your thoughts on the possibility. Do you think we'll have one 1,000-yard rusher? 1,000-yard receiver, maybe 2. What are your thoughts on how many 1,000-yard receivers we could have in the upcoming season?
I would say that 2 is very, very possible. For sure, 1. I think, unless everyone gets decimated with injuries, I think we'll for sure have 1, and it'll be either Debo, Kittle, or Ayuk. I think one of them for sure will have 1,000 yards. If I had to put money on it, I think we would have 2. Now, a lot of it comes down to health, right? So we know that George Kittle, as much as I love the guy and think he's arguably the best tight end in football, he tends to miss time. He tends to get hurt. And some of it's just with how physical and aggressive he plays. Sometimes with Debo as well, Debo, we just see how tough and hard he runs. So, sometimes he might miss a game or two. But these guys are just so talented. Like Debo's awesome, Kittle's awesome, and Ayuk is just. I thought he was severely underused last year. Talking like what you said, the first 4 games, barely out there at all. Like just mind blowing to me. But I think in this offense, and Trey Lance is not afraid to air it out. Even as a rookie, having not played a lot of football before, like he was like against Houston, throwing the ball down the field. Against the Cardinals, he made some throws into tight windows to Ayuk a number of times, actually. And so I think we're going to see, a lot more explosive plays. I think with Jimmy Shanahan's thought process was maybe let's be a little bit more methodical, like going down the field, like run, play action, short pass, this and that, the other. And we're still going to see some of that for sure. But I think with Trey Lance, he just has a cannon of an arm. The ball just gets there so fast when he like throws it deep. It's awesome to see. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Throwing the ball down the field, a little bit more of what we saw when Shanahan was in Atlanta with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and those guys, where that offense, they were throwing the ball down the field a lot more. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that with Trey Lance because he has the accuracy and the power, like the throwing power. So 2 guys I think should get over 1,000 yards, depending on health. But assuming they play the majority of the games, I expect two receivers to go over 1,000.
Yeah, and like again, like this is the thing that this is the thing, what happened last year, that Kyle, it was, reported, it was confirmed. Chris Sims talked about it. Some former Atlanta Falcons wide receiver and some Washington Commanders former wide receiver under Shanahan. He does put the wide receivers in that doghouse. So, just imagine what that could have been. And of course, when you look at the numbers, like Jimmy Garoppolo threw over 3,800 or 3,800 passing yards. And what's his name? Trey Lance, who started 2.5 games. Well, he started 2 games, played 2.5 games, had 600 passing yards. And basically, it looks like if the Niners are able to have a balanced offense, we had over 4,400 passing yards. And we are a team that ran the football, and we had over 2,000, almost 2,200 rushing yards. So it really shows you. And we had 22 rushing touchdowns, and we're a run team. And to still be able to have, last year possibly, these receivers to have 1,000, last year it could have been possible. Now we have Trey Lance, and so I'm very thrilled to see what happens. Now, my guess, again, I don't do predictions. My guess is that I think that if Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk are the primary guys, I will not be surprised if we have 3 wide receivers. Maybe one will have close to 1,000 yards, probably like 950. Another one with probably 900, and probably another one with 800. Something like that, or maybe 1,000 yards, and maybe 2 900-yard receivers under the offense, and that will still be amazing in my opinion. So that's just my quick thoughts about it. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Just a couple, but I think the one thing that might stop some of these guys hitting 1,000 yards is that we have a lot of good receivers. I think Jawan Jennings, we saw him come along as the season went along. In the playoffs, he became a big part of the offense. So we're going to get him involved. Ray McLeod with the Steelers, he caught a lot of catches, in the slot. So he might get involved too. And then we have the speedster Danny Gray, and I wouldn't be surprised if in his rookie year, as he's still learning everything, but I'm sure once in a while Kyle Shanahan will just be like, "Hey, Danny, go long," and Trey will throw it to you. So some of those explosive plays might go to a guy like Danny Gray. But yeah, I think we're very lucky to have the weapons that we do, and Trey Lance is very lucky that we have 3 guys who could easily go over 1,000 yards receiving, and we have like great running backs. So and a great play caller. So the offense, I think this year is going to be really exciting to watch. I think it'll be a little bit more exciting than what we saw with Jimmy Garoppolo, because I don't know about you, but whenever Jimmy threw the ball deep, I was kind of like holding my breath. Whereas with Trey, I think I have a little bit more confidence that the ball will get there on time. But I can't wait to see.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next topic, and we're going to talk about the second pass rusher. So this offseason, the biggest question was, D Ford, and we all know D Ford is not going to be on the roster, not going to be on the team. I just heard today that he was just reactivated, but I thought he was cut. I thought he was gone. So I don't know that situation. But when you look at the pass rushers that we have, we're not going to talk about Nick Bosa, because we know he's going to be lined up on one side of the field. So you look at the rest of the edge rushers, and you look at who we picked up in the offseason. We got back Kerry Hyder Jr., who was with the Niners when he was here. He was our leading sack, I think, with 8.5 sacks with the 49ers in that tough year. And then he went to Seattle. Didn't work out. He's getting back his defensive line coach. And every time he's had Chris Kasarik, he's done really well with Chris Kasarik. We picked up Colts edge rusher Kimuku Toure. We also brought back Charles Omedahu. So those are some guys there in the depth. But the question that everybody wants to know, when you look at the starters, it looks like Samson Ebukam is still on the team. Looks like he's going to be the guy, starting. And then Drake Jackson is the guy who we want to be the next guy to replace D Ford in the future. So when you look at these pass rushers, who's going to be the guy across from Nick Bosa who's going to be the second pass rusher? I want to get your thoughts on that.
I think it's going to be a little bit interesting for sure. It's a great battle. Like, and we're just so deep at the position, and that's like the common theme with the Niners. We're so deep at all these positions, but I think early on in the season, when it comes to, let's say, week one at Chicago, it's our first play of the season on defense. Kerry Hyder. I think Kerry Hyder will be out there. I think it'll be on the defensive line: Bosa, Armstead, Kinlaw, and Hyder. And then a lot of teams, I think we want to have a guy like Hyder out there. He's bigger than Ebukam or Toure. He has a ton of experience playing in the NFL, and he's done very well whenever he's been coached by Chris Kasarik. So I think Hyder will be out there. It will really depend on the teams that we're facing too, as in who will get the start, because teams who like to air it out a little bit more, let's say when we play Kansas City, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a guy like Ebukam who starts. I'm a huge Ebukam fan. I think he's really underrated. He came on so strong at the end of last year, but maybe Ebukam starts again in a game against Kansas City where they tend to throw the ball a lot more just to get after the quarterback. Initially, though, I think it'll be Kerry Hyder, but I'll be really, in preseason, I'm going to be really interested to watch Charles Omenihu, Jordan Willis, all those guys on the D line to see who's going to step up and who's going to take the position. I like the pickup of Drake Jackson. To me, I think we'll see a little bit of Drake Jackson this year, not a ton, but I think next year is when Drake Jackson, 2023, I think that was a pick for like a year from now, because Toure's on a 1-year deal, Hyder's on a 1-year deal, Omenihu's in the last year of his contract. Who else do we have? Jordan Willis, a 1-year deal. So all these guys could leave next offseason, but then we'll have Drake Jackson who can just slot in then. But I would say, early on in the year, we'll go with experience. We'll go with Hyder. And then teams who like to pass a lot will probably see more Ebukam.
And then you also brought up, Willis, another guy who's undershadowed because of the depth. And yes, a lot of these guys that we have are 1-year deals because we want first Ebukam to be that guy that we picked up to be, what was advertised from the LA Rams. Did not have the year that everybody wanted. It took him a while to understand the system. He started to get, more acclimated against the Bears, but the Bears, that game was a team that was, wasn't the best team on paper. But later in the year and in the playoffs, Ebukam got better. And Drake Jackson, in my opinion, if Ebukam and Drake Jackson basically take time and, they split time to see who's going to be the guy, I think those are the two players in my mind who are going to be leading the charge. But I won't be surprised if, say, maybe Kerry Hyder, say, Ebukam again starts very slow, not doing very well. Drake Jackson maybe needs more time, be on like an outside linebacker, edge rusher type of thing. And Kerry Hyder can just jump in. And one thing that I said, and I could be wrong, but I did a prediction that Charles Omenihu, when he was with Houston, when they did not use him properly, he is a guy who's a sleeper. I like Omenihu to surprise everyone. Will he take the job? No, but I think he will be a guy, like Arden Key last year. He could be the Arden Key of this year. That's my thoughts about that. Any final thoughts on the pass rusher before we move on?
Yeah, good call on Omenihu. I think he's definitely going to be a part of the rotation. His workout videos this offseason just look crazy. He's obviously in fantastic shape. And I think the good thing about having all of these guys on the 1-year deals is that we all know that next year they're all going to be looking to get paid. So they're going to be they're going to be going all out this year to get the big contract. So they saw what Arden Key did last year. He came in, played really well for us, goes to Jacksonville, gets $7-8 million. So all these guys want that same kind of payday. So it's going to be great competition.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to go to the final topic of this show. And it's a 2-part question. Basically, I had to put it on not a ticker, but in a big ticker, the defense. So the first part question is, we're talking about the defense and the offense. So first, do the 49ers have a top-tier defense for the 2022 season? And then the second part is, how good will the 49ers offense be? So before we jump in and, talk about it, let's look at first the defense. And again, these are just the notable names. These are, and I'm not talking about everybody else. These are the names. On the defensive line, Nick Bosa, when he's been healthy, He's been a monster. This guy is the catalyst. This guy is the guy on the defensive line. And then when it comes to our linebacking core, you have to talk about the three linebackers, Warner, Aziz, and Greenlaw. When these three guys are on the field, this is going to be a dangerous combination. And we do have some good depth underneath the linebackers. Jimmy Ward is, the big name in the safety room, and we just signed free agent Charvarius Ward. So we got the Ward brothers. So, and you can even talk about how more depth and more players we got. So let's talk about the defense and offense. You can talk about them at the same time. What are your thoughts? Is our defense as advertised good? And is our offense going to be much, much better this coming season?
Yeah, I think our defense should be, I'd be stunned if we were not top 10, but I think we should very well be a top 5 defense. There's a lot going for the defense. So D'Amico Ryan's now in his second year as a coordinator. I think it took him a little while to kind of get used to it, as you'd expect. First time being a coordinator, took him a few games. I think he learned some lessons. And then the defense was just playing lights out down the end of the season. And in the playoffs, it played pretty darn well too. So the coaching is going to be fantastic. We all know what Chris Cassera can do. Looking at the roster, the defensive line stacked. You got the star power in Bosa. Armstead, to me, is a star as well. He just has abilities to wreck games. He can bust through the line. Kinlaw, ton of potential. We talked about all the edge rushers. We got depth everywhere on the D-line. As you said, the linebackers, the best linebacking core in the NFL. I don't think anyone could really argue that. 3 guys who are able to start and play incredibly well. But the biggest thing why I think the defense should be really good is the secondary, because, Jimmy Ward, great player. I think one of the most underrated in the league. But you talk about the cornerbacks. This is a huge thing for the Niners, because last year, Mosley in and out of the lineup. Week 1, Jason Verrett, he goes down. We were counting on Verrett, and that was obviously a big problem because he just never stays healthy. I love the guy, great player, doesn't stay healthy. But this year, Charvarius Ward, who I think could very well have a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type season in San Francisco. He's fantastic. Mosley is there too, of course. Ambry Thomas got some play time. Lenore got a little bit of play time last year. We drafted cornerbacks. We have other veterans like Dante Johnson and Darqueze Dennard, I think. And then Verrett, if we get anything out of Verrett this year, that's a positive too. So the one kind of question mark, which I think you could really look at on the defense, is strong safety. Just because I would have liked to have drafted someone pretty early, but obviously the Niners felt okay with Hufanga and Odom or Tarvarius Moore. Or they did get a nice undrafted rookie in Leon O'Neal, but that's the one question mark on the defense. But overall, the cornerback room is night and day. That was our biggest issue.
Yeah.
We were trotting out, Josh Norman and Drake Kirkpatrick, and those guys were garbage, So now our room is stacked at cornerback, so we should be good.
Yeah, and like Emmanuel Mosley, he may not be the number one corner, but he's really good. Ambry Thomas and Diamador Lenore, 2 young guys, have a lot to prove. And if they have good seasons, that's going to be good because we're going to have a lot of young corners. Charvarius Ward has a lot of expectations. That's the reason why he's the one who's have the biggest expectation. We talked about Darqueze Dennard, another good corner. And then Jason Verrett. It's kind of funny how Jason Verrett now has fallen from last year being the number 1 corner to now being the number 5, number 6 corner. So Verrett is good to have because when he is healthy, that is a really, really good positive in my book. So I'm really thrilled that Verrett is there, but he's not going to be on the field every play because we're going to use the young guys like Emmanuel Mosley, Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore, and even Charvarius Ward, our guy. And you talked about the entire defense. You also made a good point for Eric Armstead. I think he plays better when he's as a nose tackle, D tackle, instead of the edge rusher. Now, when it comes to the offense, the second part question is, let's look at the offense. And again, let's exclude Trey Lance because, again, we don't know how good he's going to be yet. But let's talk about On the offensive line, this is the most easiest. Trent Williams. I have nothing to say about Trent Williams. So we'll move on to the backs. And it looks like the combination of Kyle Juszczyk, Elijah Mitchell, that's a great power back. A good blocker for Elijah Mitchell with our fullback. And Juice, people, Kyle Juszczyk, they call him the Juice. He can do a lot of other things. Another person who can do a lot of things on the line and in the passing game, George Kittle. And let's look at the wide receiving room. Debo, Ayuk, Jennings. How scary can this offense really be if everyone is healthy and Trey is who people say he is? So, what are your thoughts about the offense?
Yeah, we can't. It's hard to talk about Trey because we just don't really know. He looked pretty good last year in limited time without much experience, but you know, but moving on from Trey, I think the offense stacked with weapons. All the guys that you mentioned were really deep at positions too, even wide receivers. We picked up a couple of veterans in the offseason as well. We drafted a rookie in the third round. The backup tight ends is a little bit of a slight concern. I think Dwelly's okay. Werner's okay. We signed Tyler Croft, I think, as well, just a veteran guy. So not the worst, but far, it could be improvement there. But yeah, the offensive line is the tricky one. Now, what I liked hearing was, I think it was today or I think it was recently that Mike McGlinchey is saying that he's fully healthy. He's ready to go. So you got to like that. You got to love Trent Williams, best tackle in the league, easily, in my opinion. But then the rest of the offensive line gets a little tricky. I like Brunskill. I think he's solid. Never going to be a Pro Bowler, but solid. So the real question marks are at left guard and at center. So at left guard, Aaron Banks, he's a question mark. We'll see how he does. I think we have to remember that when Laken Tomlinson, when we traded for him from Detroit, he was seen as a bust over there. The guys in Detroit were like, we'll give him up for like a 5th or 6th round pick or something. And we turned him into a guy who just got big money from the Jets. So I think they obviously know how to scout that, right? So Aaron Banks looking great. I think he should do at least good. But the center position, I was not happy when Alex Mack retired. So Jake Brendel, who knows? And then we have rookies really behind him. So that's my one concern, because it's really important for the quarterback and the center to have that good relationship. And, Trey Lance, not much experience at the center position, not much experience either. So I still believe in the offense because we have tons of weapons. And of course, it's coached by Kyle Shanahan. But that's something that in preseason, offensively, I'm just really going to focus in on how well the center and left guard are playing, because that's the question mark right there.
Yeah. And I think everyone knows that the interior offensive line, if the Niners get that correct, if Jake Brendel is what everyone's been saying, I'm not going to be worried. He has great chemistry with Trey Lance, during the OTAs. Aaron Banks, we're going to finally find out how good this kid was, because we drafted him in the 2nd round. And then, of course, Brunskill has leadership. I'm not saying he's elite, but he has that leadership. So if McGlinchey is 100% healthy, I saw an interview, I forgot on what YouTube channel, but he did an interview, and he explained about during his time with the 49ers, he was never fully healthy in his time. Now he's fully healthy. Let's see how the real McGlinchey is, a healthy McGlinchey, what he can really do. And then you had a Brunskill, good leadership right there. Now been with the team now 3 years now, so he should know way more of this offense. And then we just want to see what Brendel and Banks can do, and of course Trent Williams. And of course, at the end of the day, we have great weapons in the run game, in the pass game. So I'm very, very excited when it comes to the 49ers, this offense, how it's going to be fun, and also how good the defense is going to be. Well, thank you very much, Shifty. Thank you for coming on. You have a good rest of your day. And this is the Candlestick Point Report. Go Niners.
Go Niners.